The endocrine system works to manage hormones within the human body. Hormones are used to regulate the body's biological processes by keeping a chemical balance within the body. Once a hormone is released, it will need to locate a specific set of targets, bind, and then this binding will then trigger a specific change within the human body. In order for the hormones to find these binding sites, there are unique receptors for each hormone that directs it to its binding site. The complete hormone receptor complex is what then triggers the specific biological process to occur. As seen in the image, each hormone will have a specific receptor for it to bind to, and this will then form a hormone receptor complex. The blue hormone is the only hormone capable of binding to the triangle-shaped receptor. As you can see, the red circle hormone is unable to bind. Sometimes these receptors are located inside the cell, and these are called intracellular hormone receptors. Let's get small! The hormones in birth control are estrogen and progesterone. Birth control works by altering the levels of hormones in your body. The human body can produce hormones involved in the menstrual cycle, but they can also be synthetically made and used as contraceptives, like birth control, for instance. The additional hormones works to prevent pregnancy by stopping the egg from leaving the ovary. When or if sperm is present, it will have nothing to fertilize since there is no egg present. As mentioned earlier, the hormone entering the body will need to find its specific receptor in order to bind to the binding site and form the complex capable of creating a change in the body. These hormones are recognized by the cell in a very similar way, so we can describe them the same and talk about them collectively. There are receptors on the outside of the cell that allow estrogen and progesterone to bind to the cell. These receptors are called cell surface hormone receptors. The receptors are unique to estrogen and unique to progesterone, so each one will have their own unique receptor. Once these hormones bind to the receptor, cellular structures on the cell surface begin to send signals and activate the cellular responses within the cell. These cause changes within the reproductive system. There are also hormone receptors located inside the cell in the cytosol. Soluble hormones like estrogen and progesterone are able to diffuse through the cell and then locate the receptor inside the cell. Estrogen and progesterone can utilize both the cell surface receptor and the intracellular hormone receptor inside the cell to form the hormone receptor complex to activate the changes within the reproductive system.
The image shown demonstrates an intracellular hormone receptor and shows how a hormone enters a cell and ultimately changes a cell's function. It starts by creating a hormone receptor complex on either the cell surface exterior or the inside of the cell in the cytosol. This complex will then move into the nucleus and through this cell signaling system. The hormone will regulate specific genes in the cell's DNA. Amazing, right? Once transcription is finished in this nucleus, translation will take place in a ribosome, again in the cytosol, and a protein will be made. Isn't that amazing? I love science. This can control the amount of a specific protein that is made in order to regulate physiological processes involved in ovulation, implantation, and of course, pregnancy. Progesterone is the main hormone involved with pregnancy and the regulation of the menstrual cycle. Near the end of the subsequent menstrual cycle, the body will use progesterone to thicken the interlining of the uteral wall. This thickened mucous membrane is eventually shed by the body along with the unfertilized, unreleased egg. In addition to this, the presence of progesterone prevents the body from producing and releasing any new eggs. This is why progesterone is really a common hormone found in many different kinds of contraceptives, including birth control. It has a very important role to play in inhibiting fertilization. And fertilization and pregnancy will be unable to occur if there is no egg present to fertilize. Estrogen mainly contributes to development of secondary sex hormones, as well as regulates parts of the menstrual cycle. Estrogen is also typically able to control when bleeding occurs. I didn't even know that. And how much blood is lost. If an egg is not fertilized, estrogen levels will rapidly decline. And menstruation, it's gonna start, ladies. Estrogen is able to inhibit the development of these eggs as it works somewhat like a thermostat. As the amount of estrogen in the body rises, much like when the temperature outside or on your thermometer increases, it can turn off a hormone known as the follicle stimulating hormone, which basically controls the production of viable eggs in the body. This is like when the temperature gets so hot that you feel like it gets to a point where it's too hot, so the temperature must lower because it can't go any higher. So basically, the release of FASH will then lower the amount of estrogen present in the body, lowering the imaginary temperature and causing menstruation to start. As can be seen in this image, the changes of hormones throughout the menstrual cycle, these hormones combined into a single pill can provide a substantial amount of protection against pregnancy. Depending on the individual and the type of period they are experiencing, progesterone estrogen contraceptive pills can be used or solely just progesterone pills. The most common form of birth control used is the combined progesterone estrogen hormonal pill.
At approximately day 10 of the menstrual cycle, estrogen peaks and shortly after ovulation begins. Progesterone then peaks at approximately day 21 and decreases until estrogen again increases to another peaking point. And so you can see the negative feedback that Victoria was describing earlier. In a societal context, there is a relationship between abortion rates and the availability of contraceptives in the form of birth control. Specifically, if birth control became an over-the-counter drug, meaning no prescription is required to obtain such a drug, then the amount of abortions would significantly decrease per capita. Unfortunately, however, there is a correlation between increased side effects and continual use of such over-the-counter birth control pills. These side effects include, but are not limited to, nausea, vomiting, spotting, and for people that smoke cigarettes, they are at a higher risk of circulation issues, stroke, and blood clots. However, if estrogen and progesterone containing pills were easier to get or even free, many individuals could greatly benefit and improve their lives, as sometimes unplanned pregnancies cause issues such as stress or can even damage relationships at times. For some individuals, they cannot obtain a birth control prescription due to religious constraints, or some people may not ever get parental consent for the prescription. If birth control was available as an over-the-counter drug, access to it would be increased and therefore reduce the rates of abortions and unplanned pregnancies. In places such as Texas, this is an extremely important matter because some people cannot even obtain an abortion even if they wanted to. Altogether, abortions and unintended pregnancies can be reduced greatly if there is a better access option to birth control.
In the recent years, birth control has made lives of women more productive and fulfilling. They have presented women with opportunities which were only available to men in the past. Contraception is credited to be the main factor that transformed the business sector in the last 85 years. 1/3 of the wage gains women have made since 1960s are due to the access to oral contraceptives. When it comes to educational opportunities, the legal access to birth control by age 18 in 1970 increased the college enrollment rate by 20% when compared to women who couldn't access it. Between 1969 and 1980, the dropout rate of women was 35% lower due to the access to the pill. Legal access to the pill before the age 21 led to a 2.3% increase in women who graduated college. Women earn half of all doctorate degrees, medical degrees, and law degrees. It's amazing. Women are amazing. On top of that, an increase of 30% in the proportion of women in skilled careers from 1970 to 1990 can be attributed to birth control. Due to these advances in the educational opportunities, women make up 40% of the primary breadwinners in US households with children. Women-owned firms are the fastest growing firms in the US and are more profitable. Also, firms with women on the corporate board are related to higher profits. When it comes to the well-being of children, federally funded family planning programs are shown to reduce child and adult poverty rate. A study found that children conceived in areas with greater financial access to birth control were 2 to 7% more likely to get 16 or more years of education. In the US, the rate of teenage pregnancy has declined to its lowest in the 40 years. Between 1990 and 2010, it decreased from 116.9 pregnancies per 1,000 women aged 15 to 19 to 57.4 per 1,000, a drop of 51%. Contraception can be accredited to 86% of the recent decline in teenage pregnancy. A new study by investigators at Washington University reports that providing birth control to women at no cost substantially reduces unplanned pregnancies and cuts abortion rates by a range of 62 to 78% compared to the national rate. Without family planning, the number of unintended pregnancies and abortions would be nearly 2/3 higher than they are now. Oral contraceptive use has consistently been found to be correlated with a reduced risk of ovarian and endometrial cancers.
As per mentioned in the last couple minutes, the statistics are derived from data involving women. However, we do recognize that both women, men, and non-binary individuals can contain uteruses and can experience childbirth. These individuals do benefit from the use of birth control. Unfortunately, there isn't much statistical data on everyone with uteruses, so that is why we have used statistics with predominantly women. After learning about the science behind birth control, we now know why it is an important factor in avoiding unplanned pregnancies and abortions. Altogether, abortions and unintended pregnancies can be avoided or greatly reduced if there is better access to birth control, as per the social and statistical background information mentioned.
Now that you have some background information about birth control and abortion rates,
Do you think birth control should be easier to access?
We'll let you decide!
Find the right binding site.
Trying to find the right binding site. Get it!
jump! Societal Part 1, Take 1.
For Disney?
Me? No,
Yeah, you told me you were gonna be a child actor for Disney.
I never said that.
Oh, well, that was a compliment.
Science Part, whatever, I think it's Part 3 or Part 4, Victoria. Let's
To
go,
inhibit
take 2.
Or not to inhibit.
Let's get small!